welcome to another episode of Food for Thought. On this episode, we will talk about what has happened the past 2 weeks since the ball dropped at Times Square. And of course, this episode is going to be political because we have so many political things happening right now. On New Year's Eve, Donald Trump partied with Joey No Socks. Yes, I said Joey No Socks. I can't believe I'm saying Joey No Socks, but that's what I just said. Anyhow, this guy Joey No Socks is and was a well-known friend of John Gotti when John, of course, was still alive. John Gotti is dead. He died of cancer while he was in prison. Listen, Trump has always hung around with mobsters. He's been a casino owner. And as you know, the business of casinos in America was started by the mobster Benjamin Siegel. And the very first casino in America was in the Flamingo Hotel. So here we've got, again, that connection, hotels, casinos. Let's talk a minute about Trump's cabinet pick Mnuchin, which sounds a lot like manure. It seems that he was one of the guys aboard a company called One West that foreclosed on seniors that had government-backed reverse mortgages. Do you understand what that means? This man was stripping seniors of their homes they spent a lifetime paying off. And he's one of his cabinet picks. Anyhow, let's talk about Trump pretending that the huge briefing by all of the intelligence agencies was supposed to happen on a Wednesday, when in fact it was never scheduled for Wednesday. It had always been scheduled for Friday, and all four of the intelligence agencies let everybody know, dude, we were never supposed to meet with you on Wednesday. We were always going to meet with you on Friday. So then, of course, his administration tried to play it off as must have been a miscommunication. There was no miscommunication. Trump just likes to make things up. Whatever suits, whatever scratches his itch at the moment. Anyhow, so that briefing was supposed to be about the election being rigged. Now we know that during the briefing, he was pulled aside by James Comey, and Comey told him about the yellow shower prostitute allegations. You know, the dossier that was written by ex-MI6 spy Christopher Steele. Love that guy's name, by the way. It makes him sound like a real spy in the movies. Anyhow, I got a hold of this timeline regarding Chris Steele and how he got involved in this in the first place. And this is really interesting. I can't say how I got a hold of this, but I did, and I want to read it here because it's pretty intriguing. Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent who investigated Donald Trump's alleged Kremlin links, was so worried by what he was discovering that at the end of his investigation, he was actually working without pay. Mr. Steele decided to pass on information to both British and American intelligence officials after concluding that such material should not be in the hands of political opponents of Mr. Trump, who had hired his services. But this was a matter of national security for both countries. However, said security sources, Mr. Steele became increasingly frustrated that the FBI was failing to take action on the intelligence from others as well as him. He came to believe there was a cover-up, that cabal, C-A-B-A-L, within the Bureau blocked a thorough inquiry into Mr. Trump, focusing instead on the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. It is believed that a colleague of Mr. Steele in Washington, Glenn Simpson, a former Wall Street Journal reporter who runs the firm Fusion GPS, felt the same way. And at the end also continued with the Trump's case without being paid. So now we've got two guys in the field of independent intelligence working for free because they thought this was so damn important. Fusion GPS had been hired by Republican opponents of Mr. Trump in September 2015. Republican opponents. That would mean all the other guys that were trying to run for president, and push Trump out of the primaries. Those were the people that actually hired Fusion GPS Company. In June 2016, Mr. Steele came on the team. He was and continues to be highly regarded in the intelligent world. In July, Mr. Trump won the Republican nomination, as we all know, and the Democrats became the new employers of Mr. Steele and Fusion GPS. So at this point now, the Dems got together, Hillary's team, and said, well, now we need to dig up some dirt on Trump. In the same month, Mr. Steele produced a memo, which went to the FBI. Now, Think about how important that is. The very same month that the Dems hired him, Mr. Steele produced a memo that went to the FBI. And in this memo, it stated that Mr. Trump's campaign team had agreed to a Russian request to dilute attention on Moscow's intervention in Ukraine. 4 days later, Mr. Trump stated that he would recognize Moscow's annexation of Crimea. A month later, officials involved in his campaign, asked the Republican Party's election platform to remove a pledge for military assistance to the Ukrainian government against separatist rebels in the east of the country. So now all of this stuff is going on behind the scenes that Americans are not even aware of, but things are going on in other countries to help Russia, and things that Trump actually put into action. And he wasn't even president. He wasn't even elected. Mr. Steele claimed that the Trump campaign was taking this path because it was aware that the Russians were hacking Democratic Party emails. No evidence of this has been made public, but the same day that Mr. Trump spoke about Crimea, he called on the Kremlin to hack Hillary Clinton's email. So all of this was going on. I don't know if everybody remembers that day that he made this speech and he basically dared, Putin, the Kremlin, the Russians, to hack Hillary's emails. By late July and early August, MI6 was also receiving information about Mr. Trump. By September, information to the FBI began to grow in volume. Mr. Steele compiled a set of his memos in one document and passed it to his contacts at the FBI. Now, we're talking about August, people. August is when he actually created this huge memo. But there seemed to be little progress in the proper inquiry into Mr. Trump. The Bureau instead seemed to be devoting their resources in the pursuit of Hillary Clinton's email transgressions. So rather than looking into something that was really going on, they were again digging at Hillary's old, boring emails. And we're talking about the FBI now. The New York office in particular, now this is very important, people, so you need to listen to this. Now let's dart to what's going on in New York, and remember that is where Trump is from. The New York office in particular appeared to be on a crusade against Ms. Clinton. Some of its agents had a long working relationship with Rudy Giuliani. Oh, look, Rudy pops into the picture again. Does everybody remember Rudy being interviewed by all the different news sources? Go Trump, go, and all his defending of Trump? Okay, so, Rudy Giuliani, and then member of Trump's campaign since his days as a public prosecutor, and then the mayor of New York City. As we all know, at one time he was the mayor of New York City. At that time, too, he publicly cheated on his wife, Donna Giuliani, who was a very popular local DJ. And basically, she found out that he was cheating on her, on air. And it was totally humiliating and degrading for her. And he's just not one of the greatest people. And he's certainly not a great American. Anyhow, as the election approached, FBI Director James Comey made public his bombshell letter saying that Miss Clinton would face another email investigation. So then that's when James Comey came forward and said, hey, guess what? We're going to look into Hillary's emails. This was 11 days before the election. 2 days before that, and this is very important, Mr. Giuliani, then a part of the Trump team, talked about a surprise or two that we were all going to hear about in the next few days. We've got a couple of things up our sleeve that should turn things around. Because at that point, at the time that Comey released, that, we're going to look into Hillary's emails again because of Weiner the Wiener, Hillary was way ahead in the polls. Everybody knew it. It was a shoo-in. She was going to win this election. So, and then we all know that Giuliani came forth and basically hinted, we have a bombshell. After that letter was published, Mr. Giuliani claimed he had heard from current and former agents that there's a kind of revolution going on inside the FBI over the original decision not to charge Ms. Clinton, and Mr. Comey had been forced by some of his agents to announce the reinvestigation. Democrats demanded an investigation into how Giuliani acquired his knowledge without getting an answer. So again, the Democrats said, What did you know? How did you know it? We need to know because something funny is going on here. And Rudy Giuliani never responded to this. And for whatever reason, it just got let go, which I never understood. In October, a frustrated and demoralized Mr. Steele, while on a trip to New York, spoke about what he had discovered to David Korn. Now, David Korn has nothing to do with Trump per se. He's the Washington editor of the magazine Mother Jones. There was a little flurry of interest that quickly died down. Some other Jones paid attention and then, for whatever reason, pushed it under the carpet. Mr. Trump's surprise election victory came. So again, then the election happened, Trump won, everybody was shocked, and the Democrat employees of Mr. Steele and Mr. Johnson no longer needed him. So they kind of said, well, election's over, so we don't need your services anymore. Have a good life. Bye-bye. But these two guys weren't about to let it go because they had discovered all of this dirt and they weren't comfortable with just letting it go. So they continued with their work, hopeful that a wider investigation into Russian hacking into the U.S. would allow the Trump material to be properly examined. It was against this background that Senator John McCain, who had been hearing with growing alarm reports about Mr. Trump in the Kremlin, met Sir Andrew Wood, a former British ambassador to Moscow, who had spent 10 years in Russia and is fairly respected for his knowledge of Russian affairs at a security conference in Halifax, Canada. Sir Andrew stressed to Senator McCain that he had not read the dossier, but vouched for Mr. Steele's professionalism and integrity. So everybody agrees. Chris Steele is a great guy. He's very professional. He doesn't make things up. He's not in the business of creating chaos. The chair of the Senate Armed Forces Committee then sent an emissary to London. Now think about all this going on behind the scenes. So now somebody from the Armed Forces Committee went off to the emissary in London and picked up the dossier. This thing was hand picked up. It wasn't sent through the mail. It wasn't sent through email. Somebody physically went all the way to London to get this, probably in in one of those suit coats. I mean, one of those spy coats. You know, like what are they called? What are they called, Mr. Director?
Trench coat.
Yeah, in a trench coat. So now imagine this in a trench coat and a hat. What are those hats called again?
Fedoras.
Yeah, fedora and a trench coat, exactly. So now imagine they go there. He probably had a chain to his wrist. I would not doubt that. And someday we're going to see all this in the movies, by the way, people. So now he went into the emissary in London and picked up the dossier from somebody else. So it wasn't even it wasn't even Mr. Steele. He went and picked it up from somebody else who was acting on behalf of Mr. Steele. Then the Senator McCain, personally took this information to James Comey. Okay, so this kind of was the timeline. Now let's jump to that briefing. Mr. Trump and President Barack Obama, and he's still president for a few more days, were both briefed about the allegations as part of the report into Russia hacking. Mr. Trump remained silent about them until they were published this week, and then he angrily denounced them as lies. His spokesperson said he could not recall the briefing. Well, he didn't recall like what just happened like the day before? I mean, come on, dude. Anyhow, Mr. Steele is now in hiding under attack from some Tory MPs, so that would be military police, for supposedly trying to ruin the chances of Theresa May's government. Now we've got a whole other government involved in this. Theresa May is running for something, I guess, in London. But anyhow, somehow they think this is undermining what's going on with Theresa May. From building a fruitful relation... Oh, well, here it is. From her building a fruitful relationship with the Trump administration. So I guess she wants to be in bed with, pun intended, cahoots with Donald Trump's administration. Donald Trump and his administration. So she's pretty pissed. So they've got the military police out looking for this guy. And, some of them are actually accusing him of being part of an anti-Brexit conspiracy. So anyhow, that's really the Christopher Steele timeline, how he got pulled into this mess, and what he's currently going through right now. This guy is in hiding. He is underground. And who knows if and when we'll ever see him alive again. And I mean alive again. I mean, people that cross Putin, they end up dead. They end up dead from polonium poisoning. And that's really no joke. That's well documented. And there's a journalist who was killed by Putin. He had him killed but with polonium poisoning. Anyhow, that's kind of the Chris Steele story, and we're going to move on now from that and talk a little bit about cyber war, and then I'm going to wrap it up because I've probably run long already as it is.
17 minutes.
I'm at 17 minutes? Okay, thank you. I try to keep these at around 20. A lot of times I run over. Anyhow, listen, people, we're currently in a cyber war. Part of the cyber war is sowing distrust. And Putin is playing Trump like a fiddle. He's also playing Americans like a fiddle. He's done an excellent job sowing distrust between Americans. We are fighting amongst each other, and we're doing it every single day. We're doing it in public. We're doing it online. It's really, really an ugly situation, and we do need to come together as Americans. If you don't, united we stand, divided we fall. It's never been more true than right now. I find it interesting that many newscasters, when they are talking about Trump and Putin, a lot of times they, instead of saying President Trump, they end up saying President Putin. Now, Putin is the president of Russia. But when they're supposed to be saying President-elect Trump, they end up saying President Putin. And I find that to be Freudian, and there's some other Freudian things we're going to talk about here as well. Does anybody else feel like Putin is America's new president? Because it kind of feels that way to me. And I hate to say that, but that's kind of how it feels. Okay, well, did anybody watch the town halls the other night? We're going to talk a little bit about Paul Ryan because he's kind of the villain right now. He's trying to do away with ACA, and a lot of people are pretty upset about that. So anyhow, he was at a town hall the other night on CNN, and during this town hall meeting, he referred to himself as the second in line. Paul Ryan, wouldn't you be the third in line as Speaker of the House? Was that a Freudian slip? Let me spell it out to you and to everybody else out there who's watching. The president is first in line. The vice president is second in line. The third in line would be Speaker of the House. The only way Paul Ryan would be second in line is if he becomes vice president because Mike Pence becomes president. So that kind of makes you wonder what might be happening behind the scenes in Washington, D.C. right now when Paul Ryan's already referring to himself as second in line. Okay, so now the GOP has taken the first step to get rid of Obamacare. The rallies have begun to stop that. This morning there was a great rally in Boston that was very inspiring. The new chant of the week is, "We win when we fight, save the ACA." I want to talk to you a minute about the ACA. I actually happen to be I don't know, what would you call me? I am a member of, or I have a health plan through the Affordable Care Act. And right here I have my Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee premium notice. They want me to pay my bill, and I know you can't see it, so I'm going to scan this and, of course, get rid of my personal information so you don't have it. But at the very bottom, my monthly premium for my Blue Cross Blue Shield medical insurance is $40.73. $40.73. My deductible is $1,000. Okay, so this is a fabulous plan. It's going to break my heart to lose it. I have pre-existing and recurring medical issues, and if pre-existing is taken away, I may be uninsurable, and that's a damn shame. And we can't let it happen. So we all have to fight. We have to fight for what's right. I want to give you a little fun fact. For the past 2 weeks, literally hundreds of people have commented on Facebook that their Trump supporter friends say that Obamacare has to go, but that they should have the Affordable Care Act. People, they are the same thing. Obamacare is the nickname for the Affordable Care Act. I hope that this video gets 1 million views so that I know that 1 million people, and you know what, share it, so that maybe 1 million people who think that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act are two separate things, maybe then it'll get in their heads that they're the same thing. The Affordable Care Act is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. A Trump administration is going to make Watergate look like a walk in the park. That's no joke. This is going to be, we haven't even gotten this man sworn in yet, and there's already, 25 big news stories circling around him, from conflicts of interest to prostitutes in Russian hotel rooms. I mean, it's going to be a never-ending drama. Day after day, there's going to be new drama. And we didn't even touch on or talk about his tweeting this week. Anyhow, I'm going to let you go because I'm probably past 20. Am I past 20? Yeah, I'm past 20. So anyhow, I'm going to let you go. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in to Food for Thought. Please leave your comments and thoughts below. Right below the video, there's a little place where you can comment. So leave your thoughts there, and I'll respond to them next time. Bye.
Animal Track Studio.